Hi, folks. This is James O'Keefe, captain of the Massachusetts Pirate Party. And today I'm joined by, as always, Malt, Steve, and Joe. And we also have an additional guest, Mitch from Illinois, who's a pirate activist and swarm care organizer for the United States Pirate Party. So welcome, Mitch.
Glad to be here.
Good to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Oh,
So we've got a couple of things to talk to you today, but first, just want to make sure you know that we're not going to meet on the 26th next Sunday, because that's, well, for those people in the United Kingdom, it's Boxing Day, but for everybody else, it's the day after Christmas. So we hope you all have happy holidays and get time together with your families and as safe as you possibly can. Please do get your booster shot. And if you haven't been vaccinated, your first two shots or your first shot, please go do that. You keep everyone safe. And it's really a great way to end this pandemic. So we have some stuff that's come up about Boston. It came out 2 days ago. Malt, can you tell us about it?
yes, I can. Oh, Boston, Boston, Boston. Hello, Boston. It's Worcester speaking.
Boston.
For those of you unfamiliar with the technology, a Stingray is a mobile cellular data capture device. It's if you've ever seen police doing like the stakeouts in the movies, it's basically like that, but for cellular data. It sits in between your phone and the tower, and anything your phone sends to the tower, that scoops up. The ACLU calls it an all-you-can-eat data buffet, and that is not in any way an exaggeration. It turns out that the Boston Police Department has purchased one of these devices for $600,000 out of stolen funds. This was purchased with funds taken from civil asset forfeiture, which is where the police take your shit and then don't charge you with a crime.
And don't give it back either.
Yeah. Attempting to prove a negative is in the best of situations fairly difficult, and when you're dealing with the cops who have your money, basically impossible. So ProPublica has a fascinating story out. The Boston BPD, the Boston Police Department, was first trained in Stingray technology back in 2009. In 2013, it purchased its first piece of Stingray technology from a department that eventually stopped providing this service to police departments. So come 2014, they purchased this new one without consulting anyone in the city. So effectively, the Boston Police Department has a slush fund of money they've stolen from Bostonians that they use to buy a surveillance device that they then use to spy on Bostonians.
Yeah, well, just for clarity, it's a slush fund. It's called civil asset forfeiture, but again, it still comes down to, we think you were involved in a crime, so we're taking your stuff. And I guess there was some talk about, maybe civil asset forfeiture funds should go to the general fund instead of being left with police departments. That would be an improvement. I mean, personally, I don't think they should exist at all, but hey, that's just me. Anyway, I digress.
So a few notes. Sorry, Joe.
No, I just want to say, I mean, one of the things about, for those of you who aren't familiar with civil asset forfeiture, is essentially they go and they bring a suit against your stuff. So you're driving cross country in some little town, they pull you over, maybe you've got $10,000, $20,000 because you're moving legitimate money that you have, and you're going to someone's place and you're buying some property. And so the police will just say, we think you committed drug crimes, so we're just going to take this money from you. And then you have to prove that that money was obtained legally, and they bring the suit against the money or against your car. They don't bring it against you, which is how they get around Fourth Amendment guarantees that they can't seize your stuff. And the other thing to think about is a lot of these are aimed at low income people of color, and as a result, you don't get a public defender if you are if they go after you and they try to put you in jail. You get a public defender in many parts of the United States, but your money doesn't, your car doesn't. And as a result, getting your stuff back is really hard and onerous to do. Now, they don't use these to go after the billionaires who go and hide their money through different ways. They don't use these techniques against them. They just use them largely against middle class and poor people. And we have this thing called the Fourth Amendment. It says they can't take your stuff without legally bringing up charges and convicting you, but the Supreme Court has allowed this to happen. So sorry for the digression.
And you said $10,000. I don't remember the exact figure, but the vast majority of seizures are for sums of money that are less than $250. So, like, you are going to see a lot of stories about people who have their rents stolen and then they end up homeless.
That's so to spend $600,000 on a Stingray with civil asset forfeiture money, you had to bust a lot of people, man.
$250 here, $250 there. So you're talking $675,000.
So there a few notes from the story I wanted to cover. When the Boston PD first bought this technology in 2013, the FBI deemed that the technology was so specialized that no one was allowed to speak about the devices publicly, especially with the media. There was an act passed in 2018 that mandated Massachusetts district attorneys file reports with the treasurer's office on how these seized funds have been spent. Police departments are also supposed to file similar reports, but out of more than 350 police departments, only 2 reports have been filed.
Wow.
People are gonna try and regulate this by saying, it's going to be okay if they have a warrant. But from 2019 to 2016, or 2009 to 2016, Boston PD never once obtained a warrant. Every use was justified as claiming it as an exigent circumstance, which is just another fancy way to say, Patriot Eagle emergency 9/11.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you were saying before, the Stingrays, they do have an interesting history because the FBI in particular was really, really secretive about them. And, there was a point, I believe, where if it looked like a case would go to trial and they would have to give evidence that revealed the existence of the Stingray, they dropped the charges. Now, if you search the fine web for how to build your own IMS eye catcher, you could find all sorts of interesting recipes on, especially for 2G and 3G. I mean, software-defined radio looks like it's a really wonderful thing. But yeah, anyway, I think the point is that, the civil asset forfeiture, it should go away entirely. But barring that, there needs to be a substantially better amount of oversight. And second is, municipalities, what a police department does should at least be informed by what the citizens of the community want. So if Boston or wherever wants to go out and buy a Stingray or whatnot, there should at least be a conversation about the problem that's, they're trying to solve and whether there might be a better alternative.
Well, one of the things that I would like to say is that there's really no uniformity as far as what the law is across the United States. Not even any uniformity whatsoever. But so there's just so many different loopholes that is just not allowed in Massachusetts, that you can come in and get yourself in so much trouble, and then whoosh, all of a sudden all of your stuff is just gone. You know, and it's generally the people who are moving into Massachusetts, the immigrants and things, people who aren't like as informed as to how things are done here, that are the ones that are generally pinched on the hardest. So, you know, there's. Go ahead.
Are you talking about the New Hampshire people that don't realize that you're not supposed to have a gun in your back window?
Or I was referring to the seatbelt people, or if you have a taillight out, you know, the tint is different. There's any number of reasons why a cop could pull you over, and if you don't know your rights and how to defend yourself, or even like how to conduct yourself even through that interaction, you're going to end up getting into more trouble than it's worth. Not to mention all the anxiety of being pulled over by the police for some families, and you know, so.
I mean, the cops are going to fuck you over if they want to, no matter what.
Another thing I just want to point out is the city of Boston on October 20th, the Boston City Council unanimously approved a surveillance oversight ordinance. The folks at the ACLU, Digital Fourth, Muslim Justice League, Jewish Voices for Peace, and other groups have been, and we've helped to some degree as well, have been working on getting these in as many cities and towns like Brookline, Somerville, and other places, other cities throughout Massachusetts, and Boston finally had one. So it's going to be interesting to see. This is a clear example of where the surveillance oversight ordinance would apply. So we're going to see how Mayor Wu goes and deals with this, and how the city council deals with it. But we had another topic for today, and that is recently, well, as some of you may or may not know, the Sackler family that owned or largely owned a Purdue Pharmaceuticals, which made OxyContin and oxycodone, was in a settlement for $4.5 billion that would have legally shielded the Sackler family from being sued for what they did in spreading the opioid addiction and the opioid epidemic. And a judge recently overturned that settlement and said, you can't give people immunity in that circumstance. So, yay.
Hey,
Thoughts?
Good. Fuck them. Pretty much the long and short of it there.
yeah, I heard some anecdote that I want to say was associated with the Sackler family. One of you guys can jump in if I get this wrong, but you know, they were, you know, sort of, they've got, you know, money in the family for generations, and you know, they were, you know, sort of the money is good, but what really matters is protecting your name. You know, and as soon as, you know, over the last couple of months, the, you know, universities and libraries and such that had, you know, the Sackler building. Well, it's no longer called the Sackler building. So, you know, they've kind of lost their good name. And now it looks like they may lose their money too. But you know, for some things there ought to be consequences.
I don't think it can be overstated the amount of damage this one family has done. And not just to this country. Like the opioid epidemic gave a lot of money to the Taliban as well.
Mm-hmm.
there's just no escape. Sorry.
Not to mention that we saw earlier this year there was an email exchange with these pharmaceutical CEOs where they had mentioned they were calling those addicted to their opioids pillbillies, openly mocking these people who are suffering from opioid addiction. So not only are they aware of it, they're complacent in it. They're laughing about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a non-issue to these people as long as they're making their money. So the fact that a judge had a come to the light moment that no, you shouldn't be immune from this, you shouldn't be barred from this, you're not. This it's a step in the right direction. What will come from this in the future? The opioid epidemic is probably one of the under talked about issues facing this country. That is one of the hardest hitting issues in this country.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the fact that they're no longer shielded from this, that they can face repercussions for the damages that they cause, ultimately have a hand in, this is a step in the right direction.
Not only caused, but profited from.
Handsomely.
It's
I'm going to take a longer perspective, and I was on Twitter sadly yesterday, and or driving around, and one of the podcasts I listened to was about this the fat Leonard scandal. And I don't know if you've heard about this. It's something that hit the U.S. Navy. Basically, there was a guy who was Malaysian who essentially cornered the market on providing services to the U.S. Navy when they did port calls. And he would overcharge. He'd say that he delivered 20,000 gallons of water when the ship that he was using to give water could only deliver 10,000. And the Navy turned a blind eye towards that. Like they got inklings of it, but the guy who was in charge of NCIS in, I think, the Pacific Theater, he was basically corrupted by this guy. There was a guy who was deciding what port calls would be. He was corrupted, and the guy would corrupt literally. I mean, he would go and he would have orgies. He'd give them massive, expensive gifts, and it went all the way up to admirals in the Pacific Theater. And it was only when literally someone who was inside, who was connected, basically gave the Navy a whole bunch of stuff that they couldn't ignore it anymore. And one of the interesting things was, however much he overcharged them, he also was really effective at meeting what they perceived to be their needs. Like he in essence created a monopoly, and all the other smaller players who would compete with him couldn't deliver all the services that his company was offering, which kind of is interesting because, we see that so much where the US goes and allows monopolies and oligopolies to gain so much power. And here was the Navy turning a blind eye and allowing this economic concentration. I mean, it's like he's in jail, but they haven't gotten it after all the admirals. They've only been getting the lower fish. Abu Ghraib, same thing. They didn't go up to Cheney. They didn't go up to Bush. The 2008 financial crisis, the Pentagon loses at least $25 billion a year. Defense projects that $6 billion, nothing to show for it. $24 billion, 3 ships that look like crap when they go out and they're not even working. Totally, they can't fight the way they're supposed to. I mean, routinely, and I guess I'm just kind of sorry, I'm doing an editorial here, but routinely, there are no consequences for fuck-ups. When the 2008 financial crisis, none of those folks went to jail. And yet, millions of people lost their jobs, lost their houses, increased suicides. increase immigration, but they all came out well. So I think the U.S. fundamentally has a problem with enabling the rich and screwing over everybody else. And I'll stop.
And let's not forget the famous line where they talked about bailing out the banks because the banks were too big to fail. Well, tell me, where's our government? Why are we small enough to fail? Like the average common man, they can fail. They're small. Their failure it makes no impact on society at large. Where I feel that's nonsense. This is a government that's supposed to serve the people, not the strongest people, not the special interests. So I'm sorry, that was just a tangent I went on as you talked about 2008 and the bailout.
Mm-hmm.
That was what came to mind.
I mean, I think we can safely assume that the industries that the U.S. government bails out are the ones that are required for the engine of exploitative military capitalism to function. Like banks, the car industry, it's all part of the same capitalist engine. It effectively is the government. And it's bad. bad.
We're pirates. We believe in competition.
But then they are going after journalists and whistleblowers.
Mm-hmm.
But Christmas is next week. Jesus Christ.
Go buy, consume.
Well, whether you have one of those jobs where you're going to be working on Christmas, or if you're fortunate enough to have an extra day or two off, we hope, or even if you don't care about Christmas at all, we hope next weekend is well to you.
Including to all the people who have to patch the log4j. We're at 2.17, 2.15 didn't fix it, and 2.16 didn't fix it. Hopefully 2.17 will.
Oh, you're telling me I'm going to have a rough day at work tomorrow, damn it.
That was my week last week. Anyway, so all those sysadmins and developers who have to go patch, hopefully light will be at the end of the tunnel and it won't be an oncoming train.
May Reddit narwhal all of your bacon this and every year, or whatever nerd shit, Bitcoin, NFT, Quaaludes.
All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you, the four of you, for joining me here. And thank you, everyone, for watching. We really appreciate it. So please check us out at masspirates.org. Like, subscribe, click that bell. And always, leave us a comment. We appreciate your comments during the chat. We look at them after. You're always welcome to send us an email at info@masspirates.org. And you can check us out, sign up for our mailing list. And please, a new year is here. 2022 will soon be here. And it'll be an even better year for pirates. So thanks to the four of you. And thanks to the folks listening. Happy holidays.